My name is John Daniel, and I am the managing editor for the Cinema Spot. So my first question is, as the adage goes, art imitates life, and you have done that so well with your past and current works. So, in terms of life experiences, what was your approach for season three?
I guess it would be similar to what we've done in the past. I mean, when you get in the room and you're writing with everybody, we're all kind of talking about stories that are going on with us. And
Mhm.
I think it was kind of interesting this season because we wrote the whole thing and produced the entire series during the pandemic. So as far as coming up with ideas in the now, everybody was kind of locked in and we were working remotely the whole time. But definitely thinking about things that we remember from the past and stuff that we hope for. Like, there's a episode right out of the gate uh, in season three about Josh and Emily wanting to take the honeymoon that they never took. And that was something that rang true to me. Like my wife and I didn't really take a honeymoon. We kind of like did a super simple wedding. And so it was funny to come up, have the writers come up with an idea where it's like, oh, they finally saved up enough money to go on a honeymoon. Where are they going to go? And then, yeah, I don't want to ruin it though.
Um, well, you bring up the pandemic. How much of the series did you kind of work on? Or, because the pandemic is still going on, so, you know,
Yeah.
did you kind of just go, like, write the stories as you kind of went through the past, like 2, 3 years?
Yeah, so, season 2, actually, we finished our post during the pandemic, like, that's when it first started. So, we were doing a lot of that work remotely for the first time, and we were kind of like, "Okay, I think we can do this," and we pulled it off, and we were able to release season 2, but then, when we started producing season 3, everybody was in the pandemic, and it was, like, lockdown and all of that, so the entire season was made where we've only seen each other on Zoom calls and you know doing everything that way. I mean, we're very fortunate to have uh, the technology that makes it so that we can still do this job and like make the show just from home. So like little tweaks, like everybody recording from their closets. All the actors got equipment so that they could record at home. So you're seeing everybody's clothes because that was like the best space for sound to do recordings. But I think everything else was kind of similar as far as like people being at their desks and doing their work and turning it in, and you just look at it on the computer.
As opposed to, doing it in a studio, right?
Yeah, because in the studio setting, like we're all together and we can see each other. We can go to pitches and you can hear people laughing. We would still do pitches, but you'd kind of have to ask people to not laugh because Zoom would just start going crazy trying to figure out who it should be listening to. And then the same thing with like doing art approvals. Typically you'd go and sit with your leads and look and talk about the art together, but instead it'd be more of a like sharing your screen and looking at it and talking about it with the person not in the room, or maybe doing like notes on a PDF and sending it back, that type of thing.
Thank you so much. Um, what were some of the challenges that you encountered, during this season?
Oh man. I would definitely say records were a bit of a challenge because that was our first time, like everybody was remote. So everybody recorded separate. Everybody was kind of like in a bubble as far as like doing their parts. I mean, we'd read in with them sometimes back and forth, but it was never the actors playing off of one another. Um, and then I think everything else went pretty smoothly. I mean, now that we're in our third season, a lot of our crew has been on the show for a while now, and they really understand the characters and like get the flow of the show. So, we kind of have already like gotten past some of those growing pains, and we're able to work a little bit more autonomously, which was great because people got it. They would do it, and you'd be like, "This is great." Just keep going.
Well, thank you so much. In terms of the writing process, and given that this is on a streaming service, did you have any trouble tackling the more mature themes and concepts?
No, I think those were actually kind of liberating to be allowed to do those types of ideas where, typically in like a kids show, we're not allowed to kind of do certain subjects because you're like, well, a kid isn't going to really understand why it's funny to do errands or why it's funny to whatever the more adult issue is. So, you know, being on a streaming service and being allowed to kind of do almost whatever you want. I mean, we do have some limitations. It's just really fun to like talk about those types of stories and more things that we're dealing with, like as adults, to come up with comedy and stories and all of that.
Because I think there was one episode, it had to be in the later part of the season where I think it's Alex who kind of cusses, and that's the only moment where there's a bleep. And so that made me think, is there kind of something like a barrier
Oh yeah,
or
so okay, for bleeping, there's certain words you can't say, and they're
Mhm.
gonna you can do them, but then you bleep it. But then for like we're aware of that rule, so we usually write to it, so it's like, oh, we know what we can and cannot say. And the bleeps that we do are specifically like for comedic effect, where we're like trying to make it feel like, oh, that's something that they definitely can't say. But typically, we do that on purpose. It's not like we were going like, this is what he's got to say, and then the network bleeped it. We did that on purpose.
um yeah, because yeah, that was like a cue for me. Like, okay, so I did, think about that, but I thought there was like, like a deeper thing, like maybe it was a specific something that he said.
Oh,
But
right.
you bring up um the first episode with the honeymoon, and then not to spoil anything because I did have a chance to see the season, ahead of release, and so the way that season three ends, I feel like there is a full circle, kind of narrative going on. So will that be the case for the entire series as a whole?
Yes. I mean, we definitely in season 3 start to pick up a little bit more of like a through line for the characters that could build and like start to change them and their relationships with one another. And so depending on if we get to do more or not, we want to like definitely explore the changed dynamics between them. Um, so yeah, definitely like the season finale for season 3, like it's teeing it up for us to kind of move on to
Mhm.
like new types of stories in season 4.
Yes, thank you so much. And with a lot of Cartoon Network television series, like for example, with Adventure Time, how it starts off kind of you do your own stories, but then when you get into the later seasons, you kind of build the story. And so my question would be like, do you like you were saying, you're kind of uh coming up with a new story, right? So do you plan to kind of, you know, build, like return to previous storylines or plot points?
Yes. And like because I come from, kids animation. I've worked at Cartoon Network like my whole career, and I'm very used to standalone episodes where everything is self-contained and you kind of get a reset button at the end of the episode, and I really like that format, and I feel like Close Enough definitely has that format where even if
Mhm.
you've never seen the show, you could just jump in on season 3 and they're going to be super funny. You don't need to know anything from before. But then as the series goes on, it starts to like the characters really start to become a little more real, and you start to think about, well, where are they going to go? They're not always just going to reset. And so that's like after a few seasons, it's always nice to kind of start twisting it and letting them grow and change, and then it starts to become a little more episodic as the series goes on. But I
Yeah.
always like to try to make something that still has that standalone feel where you don't have to watch them all in order to get extra enjoyment out of it or something. Like you could really just catch one and you'll laugh.
Yeah. It was a good thing that you brought up the reset, because I think it was season two where Bridget has that story with Daniel Brooks's character, and how the zombie or the cell phone thing going on, and I thought that was resolved, and then kind of returning to a point in season 3 where she's back on her phone, and so, like you said with the reset, it's kind of a spiral. It's a spiral.
Yeah.
Um, but this is the first season, I believe, that includes an episode that focuses on a holiday, and I don't know if people know what that is. There's no log lines kind of, announced yet, but did you always plan to kind of do holiday themed episodes?
Yeah, I think they're really fun. I mean, the episode from season 3 is a Halloween episode. It's our first Halloween
Mhm.
episode for this series. And we did them on regular show, and I just really like doing Halloween episodes. That was, like, always from kind of loving them as a kid on The Simpsons, like, they were my favorite ones. Um, so it's kind of like a love letter to that. But, um, I like doing those every season. I think they're really fun, and being able to just twist the rules, and then, like, you can let the characters die, or you can let anything can happen, and it's kind of like, well, it's Halloween, so it's totally fine. And I think that this one, I was really happy with how it turned out, and, like, we get really meta at the end of it. I think people will really like it.
Mhm. Thank you so much. Because you did bring up the Halloween episode, and so there's an Easter egg to regular show, and it's been happening throughout the entire season. So, um, I feel like this question might be answered, but will there be a regular show and close enough crossover in the works?
I don't know about a literal crossover where you'll see them, but I really like hiding the little Easter eggs in there where they're so subtle that sometimes people won't even notice them. Like the season one of like the wallpaper in their kitchen being regular show characters. I feel like some people notice that right
Ooh,
away, and other people maybe are like, it's just wallpaper. But if you really look, you can see them. So it's like it's really fun to hide that stuff in every episode, every season.
all right. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you. It was such an honor to have seen, such brilliant work. I hope many people get to witness and experience, all the greatness that this show has to offer. So thank you so much,
Oh, thanks, John.
JG. Yes, thank you.
Thanks a lot.